Hi and welcome to this DCP web tutorial. In today's tutorial we'll be using Blender 2.8 to create a 3D logo, and we're going to do a particle simulation with also some particle collisions. So let's open up this example that I've created and we'll watch it, and we can see this cog spinning in the middle and these particles will flow in and they'll hit this cog and they'll fly away because the cog's got some collision detection on it. And if we run through that a little bit slower, we see at the beginning we've got this camera blur and the cog, or this whole logo, will spin, then the cog will start to spin, the particles will come through, then we've got some volumetric lighting in the background, that looks pretty good, and then finally we have a camera blur and the camera will flow through the logo like this to end it off. So let's create something similar to this. We'll go ahead and open up Blender. We'll click on General here like usual, then we'll go to File, Save As, and I've got a folder on my desktop and we'll call this Blender, let's actually call it 3D Logo Particle Collision -01. So whatever you call your file, make sure you put a -01 at the end because we're going to save different versions as -02, 03 and so forth. So let's click Save. Let's click on let's left click on this cube and delete it. So hit the delete key, press number 7 on your keyboard. That will take you into the top view. Let's zoom in a little bit, press Shift A and insert a circle. So here we have a circle. Let's zoom in a bit more. We can hit the tab key on our keyboard or go to object edit mode here, and then we want to press Shift A and insert another circle. Then we're going to hold down, you want to move your mouse cursor a bit further out here, yeah? Then press S on the keyboard to scale, hold down the control key, and when you hold down the control key you're going to constrain this scale, right? So it's going to scale it 1 block and then scale it 2 blocks in, and then let go of the mouse button and let go of the control key. So left click to confirm, then let go of the control key. Now you can see it's scaled in exactly 2 blocks in. That's what we want to scale it on, exact dimensions, right? So let's press A, and the letter A will select everything on the screen. So we'll select all of the vertices. Then we'll go to Face and we'll go to Fill. That's going to fill it in. It's going to make it solid, you could say, almost, right? So let's go back into object mode. Now we can see it, and if we look, the edges are a bit blocky and it doesn't look like a real cylinder or a circle. So let's fix that. We'll go into the modifier, go to add modifier and do subdivision surface here, and we can leave it on its default settings. And in fact, let's see, let's set it to in the viewport we'll set it to 3, and in the render we'll set it to 3 like this. So just smooth it out, make it nice and smooth. Click apply, and then we will go to, let's see, what do we want to do next? We'll go to object, go to go to convert and convert to a mesh here. Okay, so now we have this cylinder, or this what we call is a circle that's solid and it's nice, got nice round edges on it. So we'll press Shift A to insert a plane, and then we're going to press, move your mouse cursor to around this point here. We'll press S to scale, hold down the control key, and you want to scale it down to this size, and that size will be exactly 4 these blocks, right? These little blocks here. So you want it 4 by 4, right? When you scale it down, then hit the tab key or go to object edit mode, and then zoom quite close into this what is it? Plane, this cube, and we'll hit the move tool over here. So click this move tool, click on the left vertex only, the left one, hold down the control key and drag it in so that it's 1 big block away. So 1 of these big blocks, right? If we zoom out a little bit, maybe, no, let's leave it like that. We'll click on this one, and then we hold down the control key and drag it in the opposite direction. And as you're dragging and you're holding down the control key, it's going to move it 1 little block at a time until you're exactly 1 of these larger squares away. So you want it to be like this, because this is going to be 1 part of the cog. So if we zoom out and then press the letter A, that will select everything, and then hold down the control key and drag it up to this position, and that will be on this line here, right? Right here you can see. So not too high, just in the middle here. Now we'll press, let's see, we want to press the letter A, that selects this object. Press Shift and D, Shift D, and then hit the enter key, and that's going to duplicate it. Now we want to rotate it on the Z axis, so we're going to press R to rotate, then press the letter Z, and then type in 180 and then hit enter. So we're going to rotate this 180 degrees. Then we're going to hold down the control key and click on this green arrow and drag it down to the opposite location, right? Just like this. I'll do that one more time just in case you didn't get that. So I'm going to hit the delete key. You don't need to hit the delete key, but I'm going to do it one more time. So let's delete this. I'm going to go back to here, press the letter A to select this object. I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate it. Then I'm going to press the letter R, then the letter Z, and then type in 180. And that will rotate it 180. I'll hold down the control key, drag it down to this position here. Okay, let's press the letter A again. That will select both these objects. We're going to select both of them, and we will press Shift and D to duplicate them. And then we're going to press R to rotate and hold down the control key, and we're going to rotate it to this position. Then we're going to go 1, 2 increments away, right? So there's this gap here, like this. Then we're going to press Shift D to duplicate again, then hit the enter key, press the letter R. We're going to rotate around again, hold down the control key, and we'll go 1, 2 increments away again. We're just going to repeat this until we get all of the cogs, right? So we'll press Shift D to duplicate, R to rotate, hold down the control key, 1, 2 increments away. Then we'll do Shift D to duplicate, R to rotate, hold down the control key, 1, 2 increments away. Now they're evenly spaced all the way around, and we can go back to edit mode and go to object mode here. So we basically got the cogs here now, right? All evenly spaced out, looking good. So we want to now, let's see, we want to go to object, convert to, and then a mesh object here. Let's go to file, save. And that's basically our cog done, but obviously we've got a problem here. It's very flat. So we want to solidify this, right? We want to give it some dimensions. So to do that, let's press number 3 on our keyboard. That takes us into the right orthographic. So we're looking at it from this angle, and we want to give this some height, some dimension. So we've got the circle here first. So let's click on the circle, go to the modifier, add a modifier, and solidify here. Set the offset to 0, and then the thickness we're going to set it to, let's see, we want it to be 0.2 here. Let me just check that. That should be good. 0.2. Yep. So let me press number 3. So if you pan out of this like this, holding down the middle mouse button, press number 3 to go back into that view, and we want to set it to 0.2, and then click apply. Then click on the plane, which is actually the cog element, but don't worry about that for a minute. We'll go to add modifier and do the same, solidify, and set the offset to 0, and then the thickness we also want to set that to, so this one's going to be a different number. This, I don't quite get Blender this way, maybe there's something they're still working on, but we'll set the cog element to 1 here, 1, and then we'll click apply. So really we've got the cogs here like this now, right? And we want to group this into one object. So we'll click on the circle first, we'll hold down the shift key and click on the cog element, and then we're going to press Ctrl J, and that joins it as one object now, and that is one solid object. So we've got the cog done basically. Let's press, let's see. So really this cog is right now, it's called plane. And you can see the circle's disappeared because we joined the cog element and the circle into one element. So we need to click on plane, and let's call this cog. That will be our cog element. And in my example that we looked at before, I'm going to press number 7. So we're looking at it from top orthographic. So press number 7. In my example, there was like another sphere inside here. It was almost like the ball bearing part of the cog, right? So let's try and make that piece. It's pretty easy to do. We'll zoom in a bit, get closer, press Shift A and insert a circle. Then we'll hold down we'll press S to scale, then hold down the Control key, and we're going to scale in to, let's see, what did I do last time? I scaled it into here. So let's go into wireframe. In wireframe you can see it a bit clearer. The circle is going to be the same size as the inside circle here, right? That's the size it will be. And then we can go into object edit mode and press Shift A to insert another circle, and we'll press S to scale, and we'll hold down the control key, and we're going to scale it one, I think it's 1 in, right? Or is it 2 in? Let's think about this. We'll scale it 1 in. We want to make it a little bit thinner, right? So this one's got like 2 depth and this one will have 1 depth. So let's press A to select that new circle and go to face and fill. Then go back into object mode, and we can go back into our look dev mode, or let's actually go into solid view. And the smart thing for us to do here in shading, let's see overlays, where's it in shading, random here. So in shading, we're in solid view at the moment. So in shading, select random, and that will just randomly color all the objects, so we can see them a bit clearer, basically. Yeah. So let's click on the circle, this new circle that we created, and we're going to repeat the same process we just did with the other objects. So we'll go to Add Modifier, and we'll go to Subdivision Surface, and we'll set that to 3 as well, and then click Apply. So it's nice and round. Then we want to go to Object, Convert to a Mesh Object, and then we'll press number 3. And right now we can't see, well, you can see it. You can see this orange line here that represents that circle, right? But you can also click here, transparency. You'll be able to see it a little bit clearer, because that makes all the objects transparent. Only in the viewport, not in the real final render. So we want to enlarge this, so we'll go to Modifier. Let's make sure we click the circle here, and we'll go to Add Modifier, Solidify here, and we'll set the offset to 0 again, and this time we'll grow it to 0.25 like this. So should we make this one a little bit thicker? Let's press number 3. Decisions. Maybe we'll make, in this example, we'll make it 0.3, right? We're going to make it a little bit more thicker than the cog itself. Well, let's try that. Well, I'm not sure how it will work out, but it should be fine. It's a little bit different from the original tutorial, but let's try and do a few things different today. So let's click Apply, and then we can see we've got the cog shape. Even though you can see the elements inside, you will never see that in the final render. If we will look at the, let's press number 7, and then go to the render view, then you'll see that you won't actually see those elements inside, right? So we've got the cog done, we've got the inside and we've got the outside. It's looking okay. The next thing we really want to do is add this text, right? So let's go ahead and add the text. Let's press Shift A and insert a text object. So here's some text, and let's press Tab on there, and we're going to delete this text. And you can type anything you like. Try and keep it the word not too long. So let's type in, I mean, it's up to you, but I'm going to type something like what did we typed in collision last time, right? So COLLISION. So collision. But let me check in that original one, was it all uppercase? I think it was all uppercase. So when I typed it in last time, it was all uppercase. So let me type it in again, uppercase. So I'm going to go to Tab. Let's delete this. The C is already uppercase. COLLISION. Collision. I'll hit the Tab key again. This time I'll go to Object, Set Origin, Geometry to Origin. That's going to center it right out on the screen, and because our circle and our cog were all generated off this center point, everything's aligned nicely now, right? So we need to now, let's see, save this. Let's go to File, Save As. Let's save it as version 2. Let's save that for the minute. Let's go to our web browser. Okay, so we want to go and download a font. So let's go to this website. It's called Free Commercial Fonts, right? So Free Commercial Fonts. This is the actual font that I used in the tutorial, or in this tutorial I used this particular font. and I'll download it, and I'll put a link to this font in the YouTube description. But you can pick any font you want. Really, you want something quite thick edged, because as the particles hit this font, we want them to bounce off of this font as well. So you want something with quite a thick edge, but you can look for other fonts. You can choose any font you want. So we'll open up this folder on my desktop. Let's drag this font into here, the zip file. We'll right click it, we'll extract it here into a folder, and then we'll delete the zip file and we'll rename this folder to font. Then we'll have the fonts inside here, right? We've got the fonts in here. So let's close this and let's go ahead and apply that font. So we'll go open up Blender again. We'll click on this collision text. We'll go to the object data, go to the font here, and in the regular, we'll select the open folder here. Then we'll go to font here and we'll select this top one here with the 20 written in it. And we'll click open, and then we'll see our text is in there, collision. And we want to now give the text some depth, right? So to do that, let's the smart thing for us to do is a middle mouse click, and let's see what view we're in. User perspective, that's fine. So let's just rotate around at an angle where we can see this a bit more clearly. Something like this will be good. And we want to give this text more thickness, so let's go to the, in fact, let's go to geometry, and in the extrusion, let's extrude it, and we want it to be thicker than the cog and this internal cylinder, right, or this circle in the middle. So we want it to be quite thick like this. I think that's going to be pretty good. That's set to exactly 0.2. Then we want to give some depth on the bevel. Let's see. I didn't actually put any bevel on my one last time. So let's get in close here. Let's have a look. With or without bevel decisions. I think we'll use bevel in this one. In the last example video, I didn't have a bevel on there, but I think that looks okay with the bevel. You don't want to go too far on this particular font, because if you make the bevel too big, then you start to lose like the gaps in between, and I quite like those gaps in between the font. Like there, you can see in between the S and the O. So I think that's going to be pretty good for the font. Let's just make sure that looks okay. That looks good. So those are the settings I'm going to use. We could possibly expand the character spacing, but I'm going to leave it as 1 as I did in the original tutorial. I think that's going to be fine. Let's go to save, and then we want to convert this to a mesh, right? So let's go to, let's have a look here. We've done everything. Yep, I think that's good. Let's go to object, convert to a mesh object. Then let's go to object and edit mode, then press the letter A. That will select this object, and let's go to mesh, clean up, and let's remove doubles. That will just get rid of any vertices that were in the exact same location. Then we can go back to object mode here. And that should be fine for this particular tutorial. We could clean the mesh up more, but we don't really need to in this example. In the next tutorial, we're going to look at actually the explosion modifier, right? So inside the modifier here, we have this explode here. So I'm going to show you how to use that in the next tutorial that I do, and that's where we're going to need to clean up our text much more. But for this tutorial, it doesn't matter too much. So let's see. Let's press number. Let me see, number, get this right. Front view, yeah. So what we want to pan around, right? We can see the text like this now. So we've got the y-axis, the green axis this way, and the red axis going this way, the x and the y. So you want to move your viewport around this way. Then we're going to press B on the keyboard, the letter B. That allows us to do a box select. And then we're going to select all of the objects here. We're going to press R to rotate. Then we want to rotate them on the X. So press X on the X axis and type in 90. That rotates our logo around vertically, right? Because we want to see it vertically. Then we can use the move tool and we can drag this logo up a little bit. So it's something like this. And then we'll press Control Alt and 0 Control-Alt-0 brings the camera to the, well, it brings the camera to this perspective, what we can see right now. Then we want to click on the camera. So click on the camera, press the letter G, that grabs the camera, and then you can move your mouse and move the camera into a better position, like here temporarily, right? Just something like this, just so that we can see the full logo or this text and everything inside within the viewport here, within the camera view. And in fact, we might as well click on the object data here for the camera, and on the y-axis let's just move it back a little bit, and then on the z-axis let's move it up slightly so we can see it roughly like this, some nice even spacing around it. Let's go to File, Save. The next thing we want to do is sort out the lighting. So to do that, we're going to minimize this, open up our folder, go to the web browser, and we'll go to HDRI Haven. Let's go to HDRI Haven, and we want to look for, let's see, we want to look for some lighting, right? So we'll scroll down the page, go to Browse or 200, and we want to scrub across here and select Night, and then we want to download this Shanghai one here, right? This one here. You can pick any one you like. Each one's going to give you different lighting effects. I'm going to pick this one. I think it's this one. Let's just double check what I used last time quickly. Let's have a look. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's that one. So we'll select this one and we'll go to 4K here. Click 4K and that will download the map. While it's downloading, let's create a new folder and call that HDRI. And inside that folder here, we'll drag and drop this PBR, not this PBR, this HDRI map. Let's close down the browser. Let's open up Blender again, and we'll go to, let's go to the world settings here, world, and use nose is already enabled. So just make sure this is blue, use nose, make sure it's colored blue. Then go to the shader. In the viewport here, press the letter 0. That takes us into camera view. Click on the render view here, render here, right here. Then go to world settings here. In this drop down, you want to select world. Let me just, you don't have to do this, but I'm just going to drag this up a little bit so we can zoom in on this. So let's zoom in so you can see it a bit easier. Just something like this. I'm going to click on this green box. So click on it and hit the delete key. Get rid of that. Press Shift A and insert a texture environmental here. Then press Shift A and insert a UV, let's see, texture coordinate here. Texture coordinate, and drag it to this side, and then insert a vector mapping here. Connect the generated to the vector here, like this, generated to vector, this vector to this vector here, and then the color to the surface. Then click the open button here. Then go to the HDRI folder you created and click on the HDRI map that you downloaded and click open. Okay, now it's opened. Let's press Ctrl S to save. Now we will, let's see, let's do a few more things. Let's go back to the layout. And in the layout, we want to press Shift A to insert a UV sphere. And let's drag that UV sphere up so it's pretty much covering the middle of this logo, right? This text somewhere here. So just drag it up slightly. Then press S to scale. And then hold down the, let's see. You don't need to hold down the control key. Just press S to scale and scale it up until you can see the text inside. Basically, the camera is now inside this sphere. And we're making the sphere so that we don't have to see the HDRI map in the background. So just create the sphere. Let me middle mouse click so it'll be a bit easier. So now you can see, if I zoom out, this is the sphere. Inside of that sphere is our text, our little logo, and inside of there is the camera as well. So if I were to go into wireframe, you'll be able to see the camera right here. It's a bit hard to see. Let's click on it. Here's the camera. Here's our little text and stuff. Let me click on the cog. You can see that here. And above is the light. This light above here. In fact, we can right click on this light in the scene collection here, right click on it and delete it. We don't actually need it. So let's go back to the render view and we'll press 0 on our keyboard. That takes us into the camera view, which is inside this sphere. We'll click on the sphere here. So here's the sphere right here. And we can drag that in fact into this collection here. So it sits inside this main collection, this sphere. And let's call this background. Let's press Ctrl S to save. Let's click on that background, go to the material here, click new material and set the base color to black. Then set the roughness all the way up to the top and then set the specular all the way down. So we've basically got a black background now. That's what we want. We want it to be solid black background. But the lighting from the HDRI map will still hit this text and the cog and all this good stuff, right? So we're going to deal with that now. We're going to go and create apply some materials to this text and stuff. So let's click on the text first. Let's go to the UV editing here, and the text is selected here inside the UV editor. We can see that right here, this collision. Let's press the letter U on our keyboard. So press the letter U. If for any reason you don't see all these orange dots selected like this, you need to press the letter A. That will select everything, right? So if you see it like this with black and everything, then press the letter A and that will select it. But you should see it anyway like this. Then press the letter U, then do Smart UV Project, and then click OK. That will unwrap this collision text here. Then we'll go to the shading and we will go to the object. Right now we're looking at the world shading, right, for the world. But we want to go to the object. Now we can see the object shading for this text, but the text doesn't have any material. So let's go to material here. So we'll make sure text is selected here, go to material, click new material. Now we can see the principal BSDF here. And we want to apply a material to this, but we need to download that material first. So let's go to File, Save. Let's minimize this and we'll open up our web browser again. And this time we'll go to this other website. I'll put a link to this, all of these materials and fonts and stuff that we're going to download. If you check the YouTube description, they'll all be in there. I'm going to go and download this Scuff Gold PBR metal material, and I'm going to click on this example, Scuff Gold Unreal Engine. Click that one and we'll go back a directory, create a new directory, and let's call it material. Let's go inside that directory and create another folder called font material. We'll open up that folder and drag this zip file in here, right click on it and let's extract it here. You can extract it with 7-zip or any tool that you want. What we'll do is open up this folder. Let's select everything, press Ctrl X to cut them and go back a folder and press Ctrl V to paste it, because we don't really need this folder here. So we just got all of the materials in here, right? Like this. Now let's go back to, we'll leave this browser window open like it is right now because we need to download some other materials afterwards. Maybe we should do them now. Let's actually just get them all now, right? So let's go back a directory. Let's create a new folder and let's call this cog material, and then open up that cog material folder and we'll download this other version called cog material. So I'll put a link to this in the YouTube description, and that's going to be this Scuffed Titanium, and we'll click Scuffed Titanium Unreal Engine, right? This Unreal Engine version down here. Let's click that one. I'm pretty sure this is right. I'll double check when we extract it. So let's drag this into here, and then rather extracting it into a folder, I'm just going to extract it right here rather than in a folder, so then we don't have to move it again. So it's extracted in a folder anyway. And this is all correct, so I'm going to select it all, press Ctrl X, go back a directory and press Ctrl V. Then I can delete this folder and I can delete this zip file. Let's go back a directory. We're going to create one more and we're going to call this circle material, and then I'm going to open up that circle material folder and I'm going to copy this URL, paste it here, and it will be a copper color. And then I'll go to here and click Copper Scuffed Unity here. That will download. and we'll drag and drop that into this folder. We'll right click and we'll say extract here. It's going to extract it in a folder. We'll open that. This is actually the wrong one, so let's go back. We'll select both of these and delete them. So we need to actually download the Unreal Engine, this one. Let's click that, and I'll make a note that it should be the Unreal Engine one, not the Unity one. So let's right click here and we'll extract that here, and then we'll go inside here, then we'll select all of these, press Ctrl X, or you can right click and cut, right? Cut, same thing as Ctrl X, and then you can right click and paste, or Ctrl V to paste. Select the folder, delete it, select the zip file, delete it, close down the browser. We've got all our materials, we're done with that for now. So let's just minimize all this stuff here, and we'll go back to Blender. We've got the text already selected. Let's go to File, Save, and we applied the material to it just now, and now we want to go to the desktop. So I want to go to my desktop, go to the folder that's on the desktop, go to the material, and we want the font material, right? And we've got two options for the gold. We've got like a almost like a base colored version, and then we've got a stronger colored version, a boosted version. So I don't remember what I used in the last tutorial, so let's use this one here, the slightly darker color. So we drag that into the editor here, and we drag color to base color here. That's it, just connect that to that there. Then we've got here, we've got the metallic, so drag metallic into here. Set the be careful not to overlap them like this when you drag them, right? Because if you do that, I'll show you what happens, then it connects them like this, and you don't want that. So to disconnect it, just disconnect it here, drag this a little bit further down, and then connect this to the base color here. You can actually click on this little arrow in the corner just to minimize it, and then it makes more space for other things, right? Then in this metallic, select non-color data and drag the color to the metallic here, and then click on the little arrow to minimize it. That's done. Then go to, what is this one here? That's going to be the normal. This is the roughness. Set that to non-color data and drag that to roughness here. And let's, normally what you need to do in the viewport is just move it a little bit. So just move it left to right, and then you'll see the color in here. I'm not going to use the height map, I don't think. In fact, let's use it actually, why not? Basically there's little dents in here, and we can actually get them to pop out more by using the height map. So let me show you how that's done. In my last tutorial I didn't use it, but we use it in this one. So let's drag the normal, it's called the normal map, right? Here, normal. Set it to non-color data. Then we need to add a bump map. So we go to vector bump, then we connect the color to the height, and then the normal to the normal here. Then if you notice, if we move around, it's going to be pretty, like also inside here and on the edge here, you can see these little dents. If I minimize, or if I set the strength to 0, they disappear. If I increase it, you can see them more prominent, right? So in this example, we'll have those little dents in there, and you can invert them. So instead of having them inwards, like dented in, you can have them extruded almost. You can have them pointing outwards, but we want them to be inverted. We want the dents to be inside. And maybe some of our lighting might get picked up on that, and it might look okay. It's going to be pretty insignificant at this sort of distance, but as in when we zoom in quite close to this logo later, we might see those little dents, and it might look nice, right? So we'll do that. Let's minimize this, and we can minimize the bump. Then we've got a nice clean layout here. This is done. Let's go to File, Save. My advice to you, because this Blender's in beta version, every time you do a step like this, go to File, Save. Definitely go to File, Save. It's crashed on me a few times. It's very rare, but it does crash sometimes. So let's go ahead and click on the cog. So this is the cog, right? Here you can see it's highlighted in this yellow color. Let's go to material here and click new material, and then that's going to have its own material now, right? And that material is a different one, so we'll click on the back directory here, and then we call that cog material here. So let's open that, and then inside here you've got the color, so let's drag that here, and it's called color here. It's called the base color, right? So that goes to the base color here. Then you can minimize that one. Let's just minimize it and drag it here. Then we've got the, what's this, metallic. Let's drag that, set that to non-color data, and then drag that to the metallic here, and then minimize that one. Go to this one, which is going to be the roughness. Connect that to the roughness here and set that to, where is it? Non-color data, and minimize that one. And then it's a choice whether we want this height map in there or not, but let's put it in there. I didn't really use it in my last example, but let's make this one a bit different, right? So Shift A, and remember we've got to add a bump map. Then connect the color to the height, connect the normal to the normal here. And then let's zoom in a little bit and let's see if we can see any of these bumps, or what are they talking about? Where are these bumps? I don't see them. I don't really see them, but apparently there should be some little bumps on here somewhere. I think they're right down here, right at the bottom here. We can see these little dents, right? So if I turn it off, they get removed. If I put it up, they'll show more. So it's very subtle, but sometimes these subtle things in animation, in Blender especially, these little things that you do can improve the overall animation. You won't really see them, but visually you won't really see them that much, but overall it will improve it. And we need to set this to non-color data here, right, for the normal as well. So that's that one done. Now we've got one left to do. That's the inside cog, or this inside circle. So select it, make sure circle selected here, right, circle. You see it's highlighted in orange. Click new material. Let's drag this up. Let's do the material for that one. Let's go back a directory, and we've got the circle material here. Again, you've got two different colors. You've got like a lighter color and a darker version. I think let's go for the lighter version. I think let's drag that here, connect the color to the base color here, and we'll see what the other version looks like afterwards. Let's minimize that, like this version here, right, the darker version. Let's go to here, drag this. This is the metallic. Let's go to non-color data, drag that color to the metallic. Let's minimize that. This is going to be the roughness. Let's set that to non-color data, drag that to the roughness. And then you've got the normal map, which is the bump map. Drag that in, set it to non-color data, Shift A, insert a bump map, drag the color to the height here, drag the normal to the normal here. And again, you're not really going to see that. This is supposed to be a copper sort of color, right? And as this HDRI map, now you can really see this HDRI map being all of these things that you see in these little dots and stuff. This is all reflections off of the HDRI map, right? That's what's making this look so good. If you turn off that HDRI map, then it's just going to not look very good. So let's see. Again, it's really hard to see any of these this height map, but it must be there somewhere. It might be quite insignificant, right? So we won't worry about that. It looks pretty good. I'm curious to see what the darker version looks like. We use the lighter version. Let's see what the darker one looks like. So to see that, let's minimize this one. Let's drag this down a little bit down here somewhere. Let's drag this one here and this one here. Then we'll open this one, and instead of dragging the material down, we can just click on the open folder here, this one here. And then we can select the, let's make sure we select the right one, right? So we need to go up a directory, circle, and then we want the base color boosted. This is the other version, and we'll click open, and then we can see it's got more of a stronger color, and I think that one looks a bit better. It looks more like copper, so we've got almost like silver, copper, and gold. That's kind of the color combination there, right? You can see that now. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's go to file, save as, and we'll make a version 3. And then let's go back to our layout here. And then in the viewport, we can see what it looks like now, right? And we want to go to the render settings and turn on bloom. And then we want to turn up the radius as well a bit. And we'll play around with these bloom settings to get them just the way that we want them. But for now, we can see the bloom. And as we move the camera now, or as we move the viewport, you can see what the HDRI lighting is going to be like. all of this stuff's going to reflect off of it. You're going to get nice colors and bloom and stuff going on, and all these different colors popping through based on that HDRI map. So it's the map that's giving this object all of this shine and color, right? We turn the map off, it's going to look rubbish. Let's see what it looks like. Let's go to shading. Let's go to the, you don't need to do this, I'm just going to show you. Let's go to the world settings, and if I let's see, if I disconnect this map, it's going to be black and white, right? So it's a little bit hard to show you. In fact, take my word for it, yeah? It's this map, and you can almost see it here. If I zoom in, I'm going to show you one little example here. I can actually rotate the map like this. So I'm going to explain this a little bit more afterwards. Let's not go into it right now. I'm actually going to go through that in a bit more detail, this map. So for now, what we do, you can ignore all of this. I'm just going to set it back to object where it was before, and we'll come back to that afterwards. Let's go back to the layout, and let's press 0. That takes us into the camera view, and let's just go to File, Save. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is actually create another light source, and we're going to create another version of this text, and we're going to embed it in between this current text, and we're going to use a different material. It'll actually be an emission shader. So if you press number 7, that takes you into the top view. So click in here, press number 7, and all of a sudden everything's black. What's happened? Don't understand. No problem. This background, we just need to hide it temporarily. Now you can see everything. So if you enable it, you will see it goes black. If you hide it, you'll be able to see it, right? You'll be able to see the object here. And we want to zoom in a little bit. And this is the front of the object, and this is the back of the object here. And what we want to do is click on the text here, click on this text, press Shift D to duplicate it, then hit the Enter key, then drag that text backwards here. Now we want to make it thinner, so we want to scale it on the Y-axis. Sometimes it's worth looking at this little gizmo thing, right? Because you can see the red line here, and that's going to be X. The green line is going to be Y. So X, Y, and Z are the three keys on your keyboard to manipulate this object in some way, right? So we'll press S to scale. We just need to remember Y. So S to scale, and then press Y, and then we want to scale it in, and we'll make it thinner. We want to make it about this thin, like this. It's quite thin compared to the other object, but we want to change its material. So it's already selected. So let's name this text. Calling it text 001 isn't very good, so let's call it text light. So it's going to be called text light. Then we'll go to its material, and right now it's using the same material as this one because we duplicated it. So be very careful in here. What we want to do is click here and then use the minus here, and that just removes the material from this object only. Yeah, so the material still exists in here, but we just removed it from this object. And we want to click new, and then we want to go to principle here and go to emission. Let's go to File, Save, and then we want to set the strength quite high. So we want to set it to maybe around 10 for now, like 10, and we want to set it to like a yellow color, yellow. Then we're going to drag that so that it's in between, so it sits inside of this this text here like this. So it's embedded almost in between. So if we middle mouse click, let's turn back on our circle. Let's actually turn back on the background. Press 0 on the keyboard, that takes us into the camera view, and you won't really notice it. But if you middle mouse click and rotate around, then you start to see this like text embedded inside. And that will help us later when we get closer and we see the text from the side is going to sort of glow, right? We may need to make this a bit stronger. Let's set it to around 30 for now. 30, not 20, not 10. So it's around 30. Then from the top, when we're looking at it from the top, you're going to see this glow coming off of it, right? It will look pretty cool later. So let's press, let's in fact go to File, Save As, and save this as version 4. And it's worth saving this as steps, because if later you want to come back and do some other stuff, then you've got all these different steps. You can move to a certain point in this tutorial, and then you can manipulate it in a completely different way, right? The next thing we want to do is group these objects. And we want to group them in a way where some of them can still be independent, which is very important. So the way that we group them is very important. We want to make sure that this cog is independent, right? So it can spin. So the wisest thing we know that we're going to do is that this glow text in the middle we want to make that what we call the parent. So we actually want to select that one last. So what we'll do, it doesn't really matter which way you select these, but always make sure this one you select last. That's basically the option, right? So let's select the cog first. Here, click on cog right here. Hold down the shift key and then click on the circle. Then click on this text and then click on the light text very last. So make sure this one is selected last. You can see these ones got like a red highlight and this one's like a grey sort of highlight here. But all highlighted blue. So make sure text light is selected last. Then move to the viewport. Press Control P, Control MP, and then select Object. So what did that just do? If I click on the cog, and if I press, you don't need to do this, but if I'm showing you, right? So if I click on this cog, press R to rotate on the, I think it's X, yep, no, R to rotate on the Z axis, I can rotate this cog around. If I press R to rotate on the Y axis, I can start to spin it. And that's what we're going to do in this tutorial. We're going to spin this cog, right? But if I click on the text object, this light text, and then if I press R to rotate, and if I press something like Z, then I'm rotating all of the objects together. So creating this parent basically allows you to select one object and rotate all of them at the same time. But if you click on anything except for this light text, right? If you click on the circle, for example, and you rotate that one, R, and then let's say Z, and you rotate that one will rotate on its own. So parenting these becomes very useful because now you can animate this whole object without having to animate each individual element. But you still want to retain those individual elements because we want to rotate this cog separately as well. Hopefully that makes sense. It will make a bit more sense when we start to animate this, I guess. So what we want to do now, let's see. What we want to do is let's see. Okay, so let's press 0 on our keyboard. That takes us into the camera view. So we've got two options now. Either we can do the animation sequence, which I think will be wise, and then put the particles in afterwards. I think will be a good idea because that's how I normally do it, right? So let's do the animation of the camera. Now in my example, in fact, let's just do this, right? So let's go to the camera. So we'll click on camera here and we'll click on the object here, and we need to set our end frames much longer. They need to be let's see, I think it needs to be around 600 frames. And then we'll hold in this section here, use your mouse wheel to rotate it backwards, position your mouse around here and rotate it backwards on the mouse wheel, then hold down the shift key and drag across until you can see first frame and frame 600. Then use the mouse wheel to zoom back in again, so you can see that first frame on this side and the frame 600 here. So use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out, then hold down the shift key and the middle mouse button to pan it across, right, like this. We just want to get it so we can see the whole thing here. Let's press save. Let's hit the record button. Then on the camera, in the location and rotation, we want to insert a keyframe. So let's press the letter I here and the letter I here. So move your mouse cursor over this section, hit the letter I. That inserts a keyframe. And if you look down here, you see these little yellow dots. That's the keyframe. But we want to do it for the rotation as well. So hit the letter I here as well. Then we want to move the camera to its position where we want to start from. And actually we want to start, we actually want the camera to be behind the text and then zoom, kind of do some zoom thing, right? So let's see, let's set the Z axis to 0 for now. Let's set the Y axis to 0 for now. And the X, we'll leave it as it is. On the Y axis, we want to move the camera in. So let's move it in, and then we want to drop it down. And really what we want to do is rotate it on the Y axis a little bit, like this. Something like this. So I'm rotating it around, let's say around 38 degrees. Let's make it 40, right? Let's make it a nice number, 40. And then we want to go on the Y axis and zoom in again. So we're moving towards the text. And then on the Z axis, we want to drop it down. and we want to move it a little bit on the x-axis here. We basically want to fly the camera through here. All right, so let's move it forward. Let's bring it down, and let's move it forward more so we can get a clear path to here. Somewhere around, let's see. So you don't want to move too far past the text, around here, not that far past it, right? So to actually see that, I think that's clear for you, hopefully. If I move back, all we're doing is moving through the camera. This is actually our start frame, right? That's where we're going to start, and then we're going to move to frame 60. So move to frame 60, move to the transform tool here again, press the letter I and press the letter I here again. Now we're going to move backwards, and we're going to fly backwards this way to about here, and now we want to straighten everything up. So to do that, let's on the y-axis, let's press 0, type in 0 and hit enter. That straightens it out, and we just want to get this camera looking good at its initial position. So we'll just move it and just adjust it so that it's sitting in a nice location, right? Something like around here. Let's move it back a little bit here, and let's move it up a little bit. I think that's going to, we want to move it back a bit more. Let's move it back a bit more, and let's move it up, I think to around here should be good, yeah? Like this sort of position. Let's go to File, Save. And what did we just do? Let's untick this record button. So whenever you're not using the record button, always untick it, and then go back to the first frame. You can just right click on this timeline here where it's this little blue section. Right click on it and drag across, and what's going to happen is it's going to zoom in like this, right? So we need to make maybe a bit of an adjustment here, because it looks like it's going to hit this silver part, right? We don't want that. So we need to move this down a little bit. It's a little bit more tricky now. What we'd do, let's move a few frames forward, yeah, to where we can see it overlapping. Your one might not do this, but I can see my camera is actually going through the text, and I don't want that. So I'm going to move a few frames forward to frame 12 where I can see that problem. I'm going to hit the record button, go over to here and press the letter I, and press the letter I here. And then I want to move the camera down, right? So that will be on the Z axis. So I want to move it to this position here, down, and then I'm going to right click on this frame here, right click here, let's go to frame 1, and then I'm going to hit the delete key and delete that keyframe. Let's undo that, I did something wrong here. Let's left click on this keyframe, not right click, left click. If you make a mistake, press Ctrl Z to undo, right? So I want to left click on this one, not right click, then hit the delete key and delete keyframe. That would delete that one keyframe. Then hopefully I can just click on this one, left click, and drag it to frame 1. Let's drag it to frame 1. Now you can see it's flowing through the text like this. Now all I've got to do is just move it forward a little bit. So on the y-axis, I'm going to move it forward a bit so I don't see the glow, right? Let's hit the record button again, and now it should flow through nicely through that section, and then it's going to straighten up here. So it's a little bit tricky, you've got to play around with this, but we're going to have a camera blow at the beginning here, and it's going to get to this point, and then let's see, at this point what we want to do, and really here we can like do loads of different stuff, we can experiment. I don't want to make it exactly like the last one I did. I can't even remember exactly what I did, so maybe let's go to File, Save, and save this as version 5. Let's have a quick look what I did in the last tutorial, in the last example I made. So in here, let's pause it, right? So let's see what happens here. So the camera is flowing in like this, flows in at an angle, and then it straight away it rotates, right? The whole object rotates, and then it rotates one more time. Okay, so it flows in like this and then it rotates. So let's do that rotation because I think that's going to look good anyway. So let's go back to here. At this point it's not rotating, right? So what we'll do is move to frame 120. That's like 1 second. Each one of these 60 frames is 1 second. We'll hit the record button. Now remember what I said, the light text controls everything, right? So we'll click on this light text here, and we want to rotate it, let's see, on this blue axis. So the blue axis will be, I believe, will be the Z axis, right? So we want to rotate, let's see, yeah, that's going to be this one. We want to rotate it, so we just want to type in 360 degrees. So it's going to go all the way around in one, in fact, we're not doing this right, are we? No, we're not. So let's go back to the first frame. On frame 60, it gets to here. Okay, so what we need to do is go to the first frame and click on this light text first. Then press the letter I here to insert the keyframes on both of these, the location and rotation. But we're not going to do anything on that frame. We just want to insert the keyframe. We're going to go to frame 60 and then press the letter I here again to insert a keyframe here and here. Now between these two frames, nothing really happens. The text will just do what it's supposed to do. And then on frame 60, you can see it's like highlighted orange like here. This just basically means between these two sets of keyframes, no changes have been made here. Then we'll move to frame 120 and we'll press the letter I here again and the letter I here again. And this time, we made a little mistake here, but it's okay. It's already set to 360 right here from what we did before. So really what we need to do now to kind of fix this a little bit, what we need to do is go back to the first frame. I know this is a bit long-winded, but set this Z axis to 0 and then go to this frame here. You just right click on it, right click, make sure you're on frame 60 and set that one to 0 as well. Now these will be identical, these keyframes, and between here you can see there's a gap, there's no like this orange line. This means there's something happening here. So what's going to happen is it's going to zoom in like this and then it's going to rotate. So while it's rotating, we can move the camera, we can do other stuff, right? So I'm going to kind of bounce between moving the camera and rotating this object. But I think what we'll do to make life a little bit easier is we'll go to frame, let's say for about another 1.5 seconds, right, will be 90 frames. So 120 plus that's 80, that'll be take us to 210, right? So on frame 210, we'll go to here and press the letter I and the letter I here. That inserts a keyframe and nothing's going to happen here. Then we want to go a second more. So that's another 60 frames. 210 plus 60 is 270. That will take us to 270 right here. We'll press the letter I here again. And we'll press the letter I here again. And 360 plus 360 is 600, 720. So we're going to type in 720 here. So what we've done is the camera will flow in like this, and we're going to do some more work with the camera. The object will rotate, then it will be still, and then it's going to rotate one more time. Okay, let's leave that there for the minute and let's go back to the camera. And when you notice, when you click on the camera, all these keyframes are going to switch to the camera's keyframes, right? So when we click on it, it's now showing the camera's keyframes. And our last thing that we've done is on frame 270. So let's just see, we're going to rotate here. Then on frame 120 to 210, it doesn't really do anything. So while it's not doing anything, we might as well move that camera between those positions, right? So let's go to frame 120. Let's click here and go to here and press the letter I and the letter I, and make sure the record button is on, right? Then we'll go to frame 210, and we'll press the letter I here and the letter I here, and this time we're going to move the camera in a slightly different way. We're going to press the letter N on our keyboard, letter N, and then we're going to click lock to camera view here, lock to camera view, and then we can use our middle mouse button to move this camera. So make sure the camera is selected, and then we're going to hold down the middle mouse button and just move this quite slowly and move it to a really nice angle, right? Move it to something where there's quite a lot of color and you can see some good stuff happening here, right? And you can hold down the shift key and hold down the middle mouse button to pan this. We want to try and center this out so it's nicely centered, and we're going to use the mouse wheel to zoom in a little bit as well. So we're going to zoom in a little bit as well. Maybe we zoom in quite a lot. No, that's too much. Let's zoom out one. So we're going to zoom in about this far. So use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. Rotate the mouse wheel and hold down the middle mouse button to rotate the camera, and then hold down the shift key and the middle mouse button to pan it. And just position it in a nice angle. Something like this should be good. So always when you've finished moving the camera to the position, unlock this camera view, unlock it. Then untick the record button and then go and check what you've done, right? So as we move in, it will rotate, and then it's going to rotate to this angle, then it's going to rotate again. So I think in between this position here while it's rotating, I think from between here and here, the camera needs to do something. To have it completely still is not the best idea. So let's click on the record button, and we've already got a keyframe here for the camera. And what we're going to do is, what we might do is on the y-axis, we're going to zoom in a little bit. Then on the z-axis, we're going to rotate this around to, let's rotate it around to around about 85 degrees here. And then on the z-axis, we're going to bring it down here like this. It's all about positioning, taking your time to find out what looks good, right? So we hit the record button one more time to turn it off and check it. So it's going to zoom in like this, rotate, and as it's rotating, now the camera is moving down only a little bit, but it's still moving down, meaning it's not still, right? We don't want it to be still. And now the camera is moving, but the text is still, which is fine. And then at this position, it's rotating again, but at the same time, the camera is still. So on the last part of the rotation, will be on frame 270, right? Here. That's where the object's finished rotating. Let's go back to the record button and let's go back to the lock camera view, and we want to rotate the camera one more time, and let's rotate it in a different direction. So let's rotate it to the opposite side here. So we hold down the control key and we just rotate it around so it moves to the other side like this, and maybe we'll rotate it to the top a little bit, right? Something like this. So you can move the mouse, you can hold down the middle mouse button, you can move that left and right to pan left and right, and then you can move it up and down to change the angle as well. So we want to move to the right, or move our mouse to the left so the camera is moving to the right, and then move downwards so the camera is moving upwards like this. So we see it at this angle. Just experiment and you'll get the idea. And then you can see there's a smaller gap here and there's a much bigger one on this side, right? And I like things to be centered out nicely. So I'm going to hold down the shift key, hold down the middle mouse button and just move it, pan it across a little bit. Just try and get it nice and centered. If you do this, it's going to look better in the animation. So hit the record button and check it. Alright. So here you can see the camera, the text goes outside. So we can fix that in a moment. So it's worth checking afterwards. So let's see. It's going to flow in like this. It's going to rotate. It's going to rotate to this side. And then it's going to rotate to the other side while it's spinning. So on this keyframe here, around here, let's see. Right about here, on frame 235 on my animation, the text is off the screen. So I'm going to hit the record button, hold down the shift key, and hold down the middle mouse, and just move it in a little bit. Just a little bit, so there's a gap there. So now it won't do that. Can you see it staying in? It stays in all the way. So now we're at this position. And then let's see, we want to move to around frame 360. So we want a bit more duration here, around frame 360. And we want to move this camera back to the front of this text. So to do that, what we would do is let's unlock the camera view here. Let's set the z-axis to, I believe, 0. So that rotates the camera to the front, right? Then we can move it on the z-axis. Let's see, the x-axis, we can move it. So let's press, we can just click on this and type in 0. That brings it all the way back to the center again. And then we need to choose how we want to position this. And imagine our particles are coming in from the top. So really we want to see this object from like this sort of angle. This is pretty good angle, 73 degrees. But we would want to zoom out a little bit. So let's use the y axis and zoom out a little bit. like this, and then use the Z-axis to move down so we can see this object from the top. We're not really seeing it from the top, but we're seeing it from a top angle looking down at it, right? So as this cog is spinning, the particles are going to come in and they're going to hit this cog and it's going to fly everywhere and do all this good stuff. But at the same time, we want to be able to see it from the top. It will look a bit better. So this is a good position. Let's hit the record button. Let's go back and click the play button here and we can see what's going on so far. Sometimes it's worth watching it and just seeing if there's any problems. It's worth seeing them. We can see the text is nicely centered out and it's all animating pretty well. It's looking all good. So far it's looking pretty good. So it's running at quite a slow frame rate. So if we go to the output here, really we want to set the frame rate to 60 frames a second. We've got 600 frames, so that should be 60 divided by, yeah, that's 10 seconds, right? Total. Simple. Let's click back on the camera and click back on the object here. And we'll play it one more time and you can see it's moving much faster now. It's going to run at 60 frames a second. So let's just see. I think this is pretty good. This bit here I'm not liking too much. I think maybe here we need to move, because it's looking from the top and it's staying at that angle. I think that's not a good idea. So we can always adjust things, right? So we hit the record button. And really I want it to be looking for more from a down. I want it to be looking at this angle, but from down, not up, not from the top. And then we're going to do a bit more work after that. So we want to rotate this. We're going to rotate it to around, let's see, around probably just over 90 degrees. I reckon around 100 degrees will be good. Around 100, you can set it to 100, and then on the Z-axis we want to move it down, right, like this. So we're going to set it at this angle here. Then if we move between these keyframes, we can see it's a bit more dynamic. It looks a bit better now, I think, like that. Then from frame 360 to frame, let's say, we can move quite a lot now. Let's go to frame 100. All we're going to do is move the camera back to looking from the top. So to do that, we'll go back downwards to around frame, what was it, around 70, 78? Probably a bit less. Let's go to about 75. And then simply move the Z-axis up. So now we're looking from above. It's really simple, right? And that's probably where we're going to leave it for now. Let's see, then we've got these frames here to work out what we're going to do. We need to leave a few frames. We need to leave at least 60 frames at the end for our final zoom. And by that time we want to be quite, not too close, but a little bit closer. So let's go to 600 minus 60 leaves us at 540, right? So at frame 540, is it 540? Yeah, 540. Let's go back a few frames. You can use this tool here to move backwards and forwards through the frames. Let's go to frame 540. That's exactly 60 frames left. The same 60 we used at the beginning for the zoom in. We're going to use these same 60 to zoom back through there afterwards, right? So between here and here, we need to do a little something with the camera. But we don't want to rotate it. We'll probably just have it, yeah, in fact, we're going to level it out a bit, right? So what we'll do, to do that, let's set the rotation here to 90 degrees. 90, and then on the Z-axis, let's move it back to here. And that will almost be like a perfect place to fly through here. We might have to adjust it a little bit on the fly through, yeah? This is all good. This is looking pretty good. Let's go to File, Save. And it's worth, let's have a quick check of this. So let's go back to the first frame and play it. So I think this is going to be good. This might be better than the other one I did. I like it. Okay. So on this frame here, when it zooms in, I want this cog to start spinning. So let's think about this. The way that we're going to do this is we're going to go to the first frame here. Let's go. Sometimes it's a little tricky to move this, so just you can type in here 1 or just click back and go to the first frame. We're going to click on the cog and then click on the record button. And on the location, we don't really need to do anything with the location, it's the rotation, right? So sometimes you don't really need to insert a keyframe for a location. You're not moving the cog from its current location, you're just rotating it. So we're going to move to here and press I. We're just going to insert a keyframe for the rotation. Then we're going to move forward, and on frame 60, here, on frame 60, we're going to press the letter I here again, and nothing's going to happen between these two frames. Then we're going to move to frame 600 all the way down to the end, frame 600, and then we're going to press the letter I here again. And let's think about this. So we want to rotate this, and we want to rotate it probably 8 times during this duration. So let's see, we've already used that 1 second, right? So between here and here we have 9 seconds left, so we want to rotate it 360 every second. So to do some maths, I'm sure your maths is better than mine, but 360 times 9 is 3,240 degrees. So let's do let's just make sure we've got the right axis here, Z axis. It's not Z, it's not scale anyway, it's this one, right? So it'll be on the Y axis. So my memory is like a goldfish. So let's go back to the calculator. 360 times 9 was 3,240. So in the Y axis, 3,240 degrees. So if we go back, we can see this cog will rotate once a second 9 times through that duration. As it gets closer to the end, it's going to slow down, and at the beginning it's going to slow down, and it's going to speed up as it goes along, which is fine. This is good. Okay, let's go to File, Save. Now in my example, in the demo example that I did, I had some volumetric lighting. So let's try and add that volumetric lighting. Well, let's not try it, let's actually do it. What we would do, untick the record button. When you're not using it, untick it. Very important, right? So we'll middle mouse click so we can rotate around a little bit. We need to see this at an angle. Really, we want to see it at this angle here, from the side. We'll press Shift A and insert a light spotlight. Is it spotlight? Yeah, spotlight here. And let's drag that spotlight backwards behind the text, and then we want to rotate it on the x-axis 90 degrees, I think. Let's see. Let's press R, then X, and then we'll rotate it. And we want to rotate it not 90, we want to rotate it 100 degrees. So here you can see it's set to 99. Let's set it to 100 rotation for that. Well, actually it needs to be set to -100 to rotate it towards the camera, but it's slightly pointing upwards rather than downwards or straight at the camera, straight at the text or the camera itself in theory. So do we want to do that? Let me think here carefully, because let's press 0. That takes us into the camera view. That's here right now, right? This light, we actually want to move it up. We want to move it up to around here, around here. This part of the cog, we don't want to actually see the light, but we want to see its effect. We're going to have to animate this light. We're going to have to move its position to be masked behind this camera and all these things it's doing. It's not going to actually get displayed until a bit later in this video sequence. But let's see if it's in the right position first, or the right rotation. So let's go to File, Save. Let's go to the shader. Let's go to the world settings, and what we want to do here is insert a shader, which is a volume scatter. Shader, volume scatter here, and drag this to the volume here, and set the density to 0.010. 0.010. And then we're going to increase this option here. We're going to move it up to around 0.8. And you won't see anything happen at the moment. There's a reason for that. We need to go to the render settings and then turn on volumetric lighting. And then in the volumetric lighting, let's set the tile size to 4 and set the samples to 90. And then turn on volumetric shadows and set the samples here to 90. Should be enough, right? 90 should be good. Now you can see the lighting, right? So if we go back to the layout and set the spot color, this spot color, let's in fact drag this spotlight into the collection here. Drag it into this collection, and in your one it might be called yeah, spotlight point light. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it should be called spot here, and we can change its color. Let's change it to like a yellow color for now. And then what you'll see is as we move, you'll notice like this cog really around here is where it's going to get shown here, all through this part here. So let's see, on frame, let's see, frame, we can probably start showing it around here, I reckon. So on frame 320, let's hit the record button and let's go to the energy here and press 0. No, sorry, press I, the letter I here to insert a keyframe right here. Then we'll click this arrow here that takes us all the way back to the first keyframe, and we go to the energy here and press the letter I and then set it to 0. And then let's see, then let's go from here to here, and what we want to do is on this keyframe is set to 10, and we're going to move a few keyframes forward to around 340 here. So for between 320 and 340, we want to press the letter I here again, and then we want to go back to 320, frame 320, and set the energy to 0. So between here and here, that light won't show. We don't want it. So as it's zooming through here, we don't want to see that light. It's going to do all of this stuff, do all its good stuff. It's going to rotate. And then as it gets to this point here, it's going to start to emit the light, you can see. But the position of that light is not right. We need to move it and we need to animate it a little bit. But for now, what we'll do is, let's see, around frame, what was it, frame 600 minus 60 is 540. So on frame 540, we're going to insert a keyframe. So go to the energy and insert a keyframe here. And we'll move back to this frame right here, and we're just going to, let's see, what we do is actually we'll move to this keyframe here, 340, and we're going to drag this light up to here and drag it this way so that it sits behind the cog. I don't want to see the light, I just want to see its effect. And what we might do is rotate it a little bit actually, or maybe we'll rotate it during the animation. That actually might look pretty good. So as we move across these keyframes, we just need to make sure, so like around here you can see the light now, right? So on frame, let's say frame 400. Let's go to frame 400, then we'll drag it down to around here. And then on this frame here, we want to drag it up a little bit. We just want to keep it behind the cog at all times. So here you can see it's behind, it stays behind here, stays behind here, and then it all of a sudden gets all the way up here somewhere, right? It's right up here. So let's drag it down here. I don't think we need to actually rotate it. Let's drag it. So on this frame here, we need to drag it down a little bit. And then on this frame we need to drag it up. I know it's a bit tedious, right? All I'm trying to do is almost hide the light behind this cog, so then you get these like I don't know what you call them, right? These like segments of light coming off of it. You can see that clearly here, like a segment here and then one over here. So let's drag it up here. Let's drag it. This frame is kind of okay, and it's in a pretty good position. We'll move it up maybe. Let's actually have it down a little bit, like around here. So on this keyframe, we actually want to hide the light. So what we'll do is just set the energy to 0. So we've actually animated that light throughout the animation sequence, and it will stay behind the cog now, and it will look cool because it almost like a windmill, right? This light spinning around. It's not really the light, it's the cog allowing the light to go through to hit the camera like that, and I think that will look pretty cool. And what you can do is on this frame it's yellow, right? And on this one it's yellow. So when it gets to this one here, on this keyframe, you could change the color. What I did in my example is I left it yellow pretty much all the way through when I got down to around here. So on this first keyframe, in fact, go to the first keyframe here, go to the color and press the letter I. That will insert a keyframe for this color at this position. Then move to like this keyframe here. My one's on frame 440. Hit the letter I here as well. So between those two distances, or on the timeline, it's always going to be yellow. Then we're going to get to this one here, and I'm going to hit the letter I again to insert a keyframe. I'm going to change it slightly to like an orange color. Just move it down slightly so it goes from like a yellow to an orange color. Then you'll see it will change shades, and that will start spinning orange. And then maybe what we'll do is on this keyframe, we'll press the letter I again, and we'll set it back to yellow, like a yellow color. And I think that's going to be pretty good. Let's just see. Okay, so one thing we need to do is on the first keyframe, the energy is set to 0. Then it moves to this keyframe here, and the energy is set to 10, right? So let's move to this keyframe, this one here, and the energy will press the letter I here and set it to 10. Then move to that next keyframe and press the letter I here and set the energy to 10. We want to maintain the energy here until it gets closer to the end frame. So press the letter, let's see, press the letter I, then enter 10 to this keyframe. I think from here it can start to fade out. I think from around this keyframe here, where it's orange, then it moves back to yellow. In fact, I don't really want it to move back to yellow. What I want it to move back to on this keyframe, not yellow, I want it to move to white color. So it'll go from orange to white and then fade out. And then we'll do our last little bit of camera zoom. So we might as well do that now with the camera. So let's click actually leave the record button on. Let's click on the camera. We'll see the camera keyframes. We've got our last keyframe here where the camera is positioned. Let's go to frame 600. It's on the record button. We can then click on the, let's see, we can do this from here. Let's go to the transform for the camera. We want to fly through at an angle basically, right? So you can fly through the bottom here, through this gap here, through the top part. In my example, I mean, we could fly through the over here as well if we wanted to. But I think we're going to fly through the top like I did in my example video. So we'll move the camera, let's move the camera up a little bit. We want to move it up. And then we want to move it forward here. Let's get quite close to around here. And let's rotate it to see if there's any problem, because we want to rotate at an angle. So on the Y rotation, we're going to rotate it this way at an angle, and we'll move it on the x-axis across a little bit. Let's move it down on the z-axis, and we want to fly right through this gap here. So let's press, let's move forward on the y-axis like this. You don't need to move too far behind it, right? So we hit the record button. Let's go back to the first frame and go to File, Save, and click the play button. Okay, so we've got some problems there, see? So some of our keyframes are a bit off here. Let's hit the record button. So all of this seems to be fine. And then it starts to go a bit nuts around here. This part here, right? It's all rotating. We don't want that. So let's see, on this keyframe, let's see, the rotation was 72 degrees, 73 and 24, right? 73 and 24. Let's move to here and let's see what happens. That's rotating on the y-axis. Y. We don't want that. So let's set this to 0. Let's rotate it back again like this. Then it rotates to here. So we did something wrong on this end keyframe. But it's okay, we can fix it. We'll go to this keyframe here and let's just reposition what we want. So we know on the y-axis it should always be set to 0 because it doesn't rotate that way. At this point it shouldn't. And we just need to move this up again, right? So let's go to the z-axis and we move it up. And let's go to the y-axis and move it back again. Let's move it up to here. So it should be around here somewhere. We can move it on the x-axis a little bit across. It's pretty close here, right? So let's move it back a bit. This is where we want it on this particular keyframe. About here, let's move it out a little bit. We want to see more of that light and bring it down. It was further down before. It was around here, so we can see more of the light. So all this part is fixed now. This is all okay. This is all okay. I'm not sure if we need to even... So on this keyframe, let's see from here, that light goes white. So we could in theory delete this keyframe, or we can just adjust where the camera is going. So maybe we just adjust where the camera is going. We want it to go through the top part up here, right? And what we'll do is move it on the z-axis up a bit. And let's move it on the... We don't really need to move it on the y-axis. We just need to move it on the z and the x-axis so we can go through this point here. So let's see how well that goes through. It's perfect now, right? Right the way through there. So we kind of fixed all of our keyframes. Sometimes you've got to experiment with Blender a little bit and get your keyframes right, but I think that should work well. Let's play it one more time and see. Yeah, I think that's going to work well. Let's just check that end part. Yeah, that's looking good. Okay, let's go to the first frame. Let's go to File, Save. Okay, so we've got most of our animation sequence done, but we're missing the particles. So let's go ahead and add those particles and try and get that animation working and do the collision and stuff like this. So really, I want to move across this timeline. I'm in the camera view at the moment. So if you're not looking through the camera, press 0 on your keyboard so you see it through the camera view. Or you can click this button here actually. That takes you in and out of camera view as well, orthographic and camera. So we'll click on this button here, or you should be in camera view already. We're going to move across the timeline to around frame 120, where it finishes spinning, right? And it's around here that the cogs start to move, around frame 120. So on frame 120, inside the viewport, make sure the record button is off, by the way, yeah? Inside the viewport, let's in fact go to File, Save As, and save this as version 6. Let's give it a little update. And then when we're inside this viewport, we just want to middle mouse click and just rotate around. So we're no longer looking through the camera, we're looking through the user perspective, right? The user perspective. So we want to add particles, and we want those particles to float from outside the camera view, hit the cog, and then do all that good stuff that we saw in the example. So let's press Shift A, and we're going to insert a circle. Here's a circle. Let's click on this red arrow, so make sure the move tool is enabled. Let's drag this to the side, and then let's see. So we can hold down the Shift key in the middle mouse wheel. So hold down the Shift key and hold down the middle mouse wheel to pan across to this circle. Let's look at it from the top a little bit. We really want to make this smaller. This is what, imagine the particles are going to come from here. That's too big. So let's press S to scale and hold down the Control key, and we'll scale it down to around, we want it to be a bit wider. Let's just check. We want the width to be a bit wider than the text, right? So to really check that, we should really drag it so that it's above the text. Let's just see. The right way to really see this is to go into press number 7. That takes us into the top view, and then turn off the with our background, turn that off for a minute. Now we can see the circle is a little bit wider than the text, which is what we want. So let's turn back on the background. Let's press 0 on our keyboard. That takes us back into the camera view. We'll middle mouse click again to pan across out of the camera view. Drag this across here. Then go to edit mode and go to face and fillet, because our particles are going to be emitted from here. Let's go back to object mode. Let's middle mouse click, hold down the Shift key to pan across, and we'll go to press Shift A, and we'll insert a icosphere. So we've got this icosphere here. It's way too big for the minute, but we'll just drag it up here for the second. Let's press S to scale, and you don't really need to hold down the Control key, but you can if you want to scale it down. We want it to be around this size here, quite small. That is actually, let's see, that's set to 0.1, 0.1, 0.1 here. That's its actual scale, right? So let's middle mouse click and shift across, and then zoom in on this icosphere. It's pretty small. Let's get into about this this distance from it, right? And we're going to press Control and D to duplicate it. Control D and then hit Enter key. And we're going to drag it across. So we've got 2 copies now. You can see 2 icospheres here. And we'll press Control D to copy, and then hit, sorry, it's not Control, it's Shift D. Shift and D to duplicate, and then hit Enter. So it's Shift D to duplicate, hit the Enter key, and then drag it across. You've got 3 of them. Let's click on the first one, and we will go to the edit mode, and we'll click on any one of these vertices. Doesn't really matter which one you click on, and just drag it to the side slightly. Not a lot, don't go crazy like this, just a little bit. We want them all to be a slightly different shape. So click on any of the vertices and just drag it and make it a slightly different shape. Go back to the object mode, click on the next one, go to edit mode, and then click on the different vertices, something like down here. And you can click inside the circle and drag it freely, like this. You can drag it like this, and click on maybe this one over here, and we'll drag it this way. Then let's click on the other one, go back into object mode, click on this one, go into edit mode, and we'll drag something like, let's see, this one here. We'll click inside the circle and drag it in this direction. We should, in theory, be able to drag it. Let's zoom in a bit more probably. Let's zoom in a little bit here. If you click on the actual edge of the circle, then you can drag it in any direction you want, right? That's what I was trying to explain. And then let's middle mouse click and rotate underneath. We'll click this one. You can do yours however you want, right? You don't have to follow what I'm doing, but we just want them to all be slightly different shapes. We don't want 3 particles that look exactly the same. It won't make that much difference, but everything, all these little things make a difference, right? So let's click objects. We've got the 3 there. That's all done. And we want to leave them with these like sharp edges. We don't want to smooth shade them or anything. We'll click on the first one, go to the material, click new material, go to the emission shader. Let's zoom out a little bit so we can see the text here. We want to see it pretty small, like something like this. And then go to the strength, and let's set this to around 30 for the minute. It's going to be quite strong. 30 might be a bit too high, we'll see. And choose a color. I'm going to choose a yellow color because I want a color that sits with the content in here. Then we'll click on the one next to it, this one. We'll go to new material, we'll go to emission, and we'll set that to 30 for the minute. I think 30 is going to be okay. We're going to leave that one white. And then the last one, we'll click on it. Let's click on that one, go to new, emission shader, and we'll set that to 30. And this one I'm going to set to like a blue color. So pick any 3 colors you like. I would say try and choose yellow as one of the colors, white as one, and then pick whatever random color you want. Because when these particles flow over, we want some sort of consistency with the color scheme, right? So this should work okay. You can pick any 3 colors you like. So it's entirely your choice. Let's click on the what is this called? This circle. Let's go to File, Save. Let's just pan up. So I'm holding down the Shift key and using the mouse wheel to pan upwards. Holding down the mouse wheel. And we'll go to, we need to do one thing here. So in the, let's see, in the scene collection up here, we need to right click and click new. That creates a new collection here. In this new collection, we want to double click and call it particles. Then we want to click on this first one, hold down the Shift key and click on the other 2. Select all 3 of them and drag them into this new collection called particles. Then click on the circle, and the circle we want to rename it to emitter. So call it emitter, that's what it is a particle emitter. And then we want to, let's see, go to the particle emitter here. So click on the, what we call the emitter, which is this circle. Go to the particle system, click new, and we need to, let's see, let's just click play, and the particles are dropping downwards, right? We don't want that. And first of all, we want to rotate this. We want to rotate it on the y-axis. So let's press R to rotate, then Y, and let's rotate it around to this sort of angle. We want the particles to go like this, like flow, like in a sort of, you get what I mean. Okay, so what we'll do is set the end frame for now. Let's increase that all the way up. Let's set it to around something like 400 and set the lifetime to around 150. That should get the particles to at least get close to this object. Then we want to go to the, let's see, how did I do this? Let's go to the field weight and set the gravity right down, I believe. Let's see now. Now they're flowing in that direction, right? But we wanted them to curve. So we need to change the velocity. I think we need to bring this down more. Let's see now. So they're still going in that direction. Really, 1 minute. Let's play this. Let's see if there's even enough lifetime for them to get there. I think they're dying off too quickly anyway. So let's set the lifetime to something like 300 for the minute. Let's play it again. We can reduce the number of particles. We don't really need that many for now. We can set it to something like 144 or whatever, it doesn't really matter. But we want it to bend around. So let's see. Maybe this is all okay for now. So velocity is going to be the speed that they're moving at, right? So that's not going to affect its trajectory really. So let's leave this at 1, probably 1 is good anyway. And maybe we need to give it a bit of gravity, right? Some gravity. Here we go. So they're kind of moving where we want them to move. So we'll give it a little bit of gravity. Maybe it needs more. Okay. Let's set that gravity. Let's set it to about halfway. So now they're moving in that direction, so we need to change the velocity to get them to move more towards this cog. That's a bit too much. Here looks good. Let's see. I think that's going to be alright. I think it's overshooting it a little bit. Let's set this to around 6. Right. Then let's go. So I've set the field weight gravity to 0.5. Let's go to the let's see. Let's set this back up to something like 500. Okay, that's good. Then let's go to the physics, and in the Brownian let's set that to around, let's try around 5 for now. I don't know if that's going to be too high. Let's see. No, that looks okay actually. I think that might work. So what we'll do is go to File, Save. Let's pause this and go back to the first frame. Let's click on this text here, this collision. Where is this text here? This first text. Let's click on that, and let's go to the physics and set collision. Then go to the cog and go to the physics again and select collision. And that's what you need to do. If we go back and press play, now all of these particles will get thrown in different directions based on hitting this cog or hitting this this text. But let's see it from this side. It might be a bit clearer. And we won't actually start the particles straight away. We're going to start them a bit afterwards. And they're too big, and we need to do a few things here, right? So what we'll do is go to the emitter, go to the particle settings, go to the render. In the halo, select collection. So under render, in the render as, select collection, go to the collection section here, instance collection, click here and select particles. These are the particles we created. Select pick random, and then let's increase the size of them. Let's set them to around let's say to around 3. I think they're a little bit bigger than my previous one. And then set the scale to randomness. Now let's check it. We need to create more of these, right? So we 500. I think 500 might be enough. I think I had more in my one though. Let's set it to around 1500. Okay, calm down. Go. I think that might be good, you know. Something telling me this needs to be further back though. So let's press 0 to see what the camera sees. It is outside the camera view. So let's go back to the first frame and let's see what the camera sees, right? So we want to make sure that this doesn't get displayed in the camera. We don't want to see these particles being emitted. Even we're going to hide the object anyway, but at all times it's outside the camera view, which is good. So if your one's not outside the camera view, you need to move it back and just give it a bit more velocity or change it slightly. But what you can always do, just to make sure, let's go to like frame 120. You can click on this particle emitter here, down here, or click on the emitter here. And what we'll always do anyway, as default, is turn off show emitter here. Turn that off. Go to File, Save. Then let's go back to the first frame. And what we want is, we want this to spin around, right? The first time. So on frame 120 is when we want to start to see the particles. So in the emitter, go to the top. This is down to your own preference. You can have the particles show away straight away. In my example, I set the start frame to 120. So they don't start to display until frame 120. So it's going to do the, really, I think this is a wise thing to do. So it's going to do the camera blur thing at the beginning. It's going to rotate. Then it's going to start to spin. And as it starts to spin, then the particles will start to flow. And then it's just a case of, I think that's pretty much good, right? So on 400, the particles end, and then it does its thing here. That's like perfect timing, really. That's just like perfect. That worked out well, didn't it? Sometimes a bit of headache. So let's go back to the first frame. Now, one thing you need to always remember to do, and last time I did this video thing, I made a mistake, right? I forgot to bake it. So I did all of the work, went to bake it, baked the whole video, and the particles just fell straight through the text because I didn't press this one button called bake. In Cache, you need to click on this. In fact, just click Bake All Dynamics. It doesn't take very long. It's quite a simple simulation, right? So let's click on this overlay. This hides all the overlays. So all of this like floor and any sort of things we click on, anything in here will get hidden. And that allows us to just see what this is going to look like. Almost like a real-time render this is, right? It's not exactly the same, but it's pretty close to what the final render will look like. So what we can do now is go to the output settings here, not the output, what is this called here? The render settings, and we can change like the threshold. We can try and get some more bloom going here. So let's increase that. We can turn up the intensity as well. And that's really for you to go and experiment with the settings to see what looks good for you. We need to bring this down a bit. So experiment with these. The threshold, you normally leave that quite low. If you set it too high, then you won't see any. You won't really see much bloom. You want to set it pretty low, but not too low. Otherwise, it's just too much. It's overkill. I think around here is going to be good for me. Let's just pause it on this frame. Let's try and tweak it a little bit. Maybe we'll set this pretty high. I think it looks okay there. Something like this, right? So we zoom in with our mouse, we can see the bloom around the objects. When we reduce this, it's just too washed out, right? So if we leave this quite high up, and then the radius we can play around with, maybe we'll set it to something like this. I think this looks pretty good. And then the intensity is just going to affect how much I want to whack this all the way up to the top. I want it to be quite strong. Then I'm going to go into the shading. We're still looking at that. So up here, press 0 to see the camera view, that exact same frame. Let's just drag this down a little bit. And then, do you remember we said we'll come back to this when we was looking at this before, this UV map, right? What we want to do is, let's see. When we start rotating this, you can see that it's changing the reflection here, right? So let's set this back to 0 what we will do is turn off the background so we can actually see the UV map now, and we're going to rotate around. We're going to rotate, I think, let's have a look. We're going to rotate upwards maybe. Let's have a look here. Let's try and get it to, this is really, you need to really experiment. Somewhere around, this is really down to your own preference. There's no like golden rule here. Let me set the Y to 0. I think on the x-axis, let's bring it up here. I think around here is going to be pretty good. Minus 7.5 and 152, like here. Trying to get all of the text lit up, right? Nicely, like this. So we can just go and see what it looks like now. So let's go back to the layout. You can see it in here. Let's turn back on our background. Now you can see the text. Let's go back to the first frame and play it. That's going to look pretty good. There's one thing I want to do is let's go back a few frames here where it's showing like from the top angle, right? Like around here. And then let's go to the light text. This is that yellow text. And let's go to the strength here. And I want to increase that by quite a lot. I want that to glow. I'm going to say pretty high, 150. So let's go back to the first frame and play it again. Now that's at 150. That might be overkill, right? Yeah, I think that's way too high. Let's bring that down to around 90 or 80. Or maybe 30 was the right number. Let's go to like, sometimes it's worth rendering it out on a frame like this to see what it looks like. So let's press F12 and see. Until you render out the frame, you're not really going to know, right? So this is looking a bit iffy inside here. Like that there ain't looking too good, is it? So I think, let's see, let's turn back on our overlays. Let's click on this text and let's see. I wonder if I let me just try and click on the light text and convert it to a mesh. I don't know if we converted that one. I'm pretty sure we did. We did convert it to a mesh. It just looks a bit messy, but I think it is because it's inside, buried inside here, and on this exact same width and height. It's causing a problem. So maybe we need to make this slightly larger. So let's click on the light text, click on the object, and then the scale. Let's see. That's scaling out everything. That's going to scale out everything, isn't it? Because they're connected. Okay, so I'm not sure how to fix that. Let's just go to the output, the render setting. Let's set it to 120. Let's see if the samples will fix anything. I'm not sure if it's down to the samples. I don't think it is though. No, because you see it just doesn't look right in there, right? I'm pretty sure in my example it didn't look that bad. Maybe it was like that. I'm going to try and do something with this text in here, but I don't think there's much I can do about it. Because you can't really control that material. That material was set before, right? So, in Sod's law, that we used that as the parent as well. So it would have been wiser to make this main text the parent. Then we could have done whatever we wanted with this one in terms of moving it and doing stuff to it. But we could also change its material. It doesn't have to be a glow, right? So we could just go to, in fact, what we might do, let's go to the text light, let's go to the material, and let's change it to the material 7. Was it material 7? No. Material 3. That should be like that bronze text, right? That silver text. That was that material there. Let's press F12. Let's render that frame and see what it looks like with that material. For me, it's not quite right in there. So the only other option, I mean, your one might look okay. If your one looks fine, then you don't really need to do anything here. But for me, that doesn't look quite right. So what we'll do in that material, I want to try and make it the same as the gold material. Let's click on the right thing here. Let's go to the text. I assume that's the gold one, right? Should have really named these materials properly. It would help. You know what, I'm going to just leave it on the yellow glow. So undo that. Let's click on the light text. In the material, I'll set it to, I think it was this one, right? Here. Let's bring that down to maybe around 10. That isn't quite right, so you can see here. The one thing we might be able to do, one way we might be able to fix it is to go to click on this collision text, because this isn't parented to anything, but that yellow text in there was. So we could make this collision text a little bit smaller, so that this yellow text is a little bit bigger than the collision text. And in theory, that should fix it. So if we click on the collision text here, and then go to its object data. Let's try and scale it down a little bit, just like by 1 point on each one. Now it's fixed. So if there's a will, there is a way. Now it looks nice, right? It's looking proper. That's what we want. Sometimes, unfortunately, you've got to play around with things to get them right. So the reason why let me just try and explain what happened. So in this light text and the text, the collision, the gold text were exactly the same size in terms of the width, the height, but not necessarily their depth, but the width and the height were exactly the same. So when both of those texts are overlaid inside like this, it's kind of sitting right on the surface together. So it's kind of with Blender's making a decision, do I use this one, do I use that one? It's a bit of a mix between the both, and it just ain't looking right. So what we've done, and the reason why we couldn't make the this yellow text bigger is because it's parented. That's the one that we're using to rotate the object and do all that other stuff. Do you remember when we selected them? We selected them from all of these, and we selected the light text last, should I say, and we used that as the parent. So to fix it, the only way that I could work out to do that, and it seems to have worked anyway, is to make this gold text slightly smaller, only by just 1 point here. And that seems to have fixed it. Now it's glowing nice. And in theory, we should, let's press 0 to see the camera view. Now we should be able to go to the light text, go to its material again, increase it, and it should look good now. That's why I wanted this nice glow, right? So we can say it's around 40, and as it flows through now, it should glow nicely. There you go, that's what we want. Okay, let's play it one time through and then we can go to render. Let's just turn off the overlays. I think we're good to go. So I'm going to pause it, go to the first frame, file save as. Let's make a next version 7. We're pretty much done here now. Let's save this. Then let's go to, let's go to the render settings. We're going to render 120 samples. This is good. Everything here is good. Volumetrics is set up. We set that to 4 tiles, 90 samples, and then the shadow set to 90. So that's all good. Then we're going to go to the output here, 1080p. This is all good. First frame, last frame, 600. This is okay. One thing we should always do, this always makes me paranoid, right? Click on the emitter, go to the particle settings, delete the bake, and just rebake it one more time. Sometimes that if you render out all them frames and it isn't baked properly, what you can also do is just before you go and run the animation is to move to a middle frame, something like here, and press F12 to render it. Make sure you see the particles the way that you see them in the viewport. You can see like the blue one here and a couple here over here, right? Mainly blue and white over here. And then you see them same blue and white ones here. Then you know when you run the animation it should be correct. So let's go back to the first frame. Let's go back to the output. This is all good. Let's go to the PNG and set it to AVI JPEG. We should click RGB here. We want color. Let's go to the output folder. We'll go to my desktop, click on this folder, click accept, and then press Ctrl F12. I normally wait until I see at least a few frames. So it's rendering at 4 seconds a frame, so we're going to need to wait a little while, because remember the first frame or the first 3 frames are going to be black because the camera is moving through the text. In fact, let's stop this. We've missed something, so let's press escape. I'm going to press escape, and that stops the render, hitting the escape key. We missed one thing. So let's go to frame 60 here. We'll hit the record button. We'll go to the render and turn on the depth of field here. Turn this on. Go to the camera and click on it. Click here on the camera. Go to the camera options here. Drop down this depth of field and set it to, let's see, set it to set this to 0.5, then move to the first frame and bring this down. Let's see, if we want it around 0.1, let's try that. That's 0.1. Okay, I'm doing something very silly here, right? So let's sort this one out first. Let's sort out what it looks like here. We want that to be on around 0.06, yeah? We want this blur like this. We need to press the letter I on here. So we're going to move to frame 60 and set it to 0.06 and press the letter I. Then we'll move back to frame 1 and press the letter I here as well. So we know we can't really tell what the blur looks like because it's a black frame. That's why we're setting it on 60 first. So as we move through and get to this frame 60, now we can decide what this looks like. We're going to set that to 0.5. So it's full resolution, right? Full clarity. So now we can see as we flow through. Let's see. Maybe that needs to happen a little bit later. So let's set this. Let's see. Let's get this right. Maybe that needs to happen around here. So on this one, let's bring it down again. Let's set it to around 0.6. Let's set it to around 0.8. So between here and here, it's going to be quite blurred, right? Then it's going to spin, and between the spin and this frame 120, we want to set it to 0.5. So that's going to be blurred. As it rotates, the camera will focus, right? Then it looks a lot better. I quite like the blur at the beginning. Then the cog starts to rotate, you get your particles, all that good stuff. We'll get to here. So probably around, let's see, around frame 5. We'll probably do a bit earlier. Let's say around here, frame 480. Let's press the letter I here. So between these two frames, it's going to be static at 0.5. Then we'll go to frame 6. Let's see. Probably. Let's try it around here, frame 540. Let's bring that down again to 0.6. Let's do 0.5. So I think 0.5 might be a little bit too much, so we try and set it to around 0.7 and let's see what that looks like. I think that might be okay, maybe 0.6. 0.06. I think we're going to stick with that. Let's just see from the beginning. We've got our camera blur. It'll rotate all the particles. Everything's good. The lighting's good. And then as it flows in here, it's going to blur out. Yeah, I think that's going to be okay. Alright, so you can experiment with your one and just play around with the settings and get it exactly you want. Once you're done with playing with, you know, setting up the settings, then make sure you untick the record button. Let's see here. Yep, that should be fine. Okay, so we need to re-render that again. We started a few frames, but let's just start it again. So go to frame 1. Let's go to frame 1 here. Control S to save. Let's go to our output again. Everything's set up. So we've got to do is press Control and F12. So we missed that little part. We almost missed it anyway. Spotted it, but we just wanted that camera blur at the beginning. You don't have to do that, but I think it looks a bit better. So we're pretty much done. We just got to wait for this to render out now. So that's going to take a bit of time. I like to always see a first few frames that render, at least see there's one thing coming out. So let's just be a bit patient and see if we can see that first frame. And if it's good, I'll pause the video, let this all render out, and then we can check the end result. Okay, everything seems to be rendering, so I'll leave this, I'll pause it, and then we'll come back and watch the end video result. Okay, so Blender's finished rendering out all the 600 frames. We can close this, and let's go back to the first frame and go to File, Save. We'll minimize Blender, and inside this folder we should have the new AVI file. So let's open that, and we can see inside here the final result. And then we'll take a look and see how we might improve this. So it's looking pretty good. It's very similar to the first one I created. I can see some differences here, right? So in the first one, the cog was spinning a lot slower. Can you see it spinning a lot slower? So you may want to slow down the speed of the cog, and also the particles were moving a lot slower in this version. But apart from that, they're pretty much the same. There's not much difference between them. Let's make a copy of this here, and we'll watch the first. This is the new one that we just created. You can see those particles are moving a lot faster, and so is the cog spinning a lot faster. I think it looks actually okay, and the lighting came through pretty well. The volumetric lighting, we can see that in there as well. What I would have probably slowed down that cog speed though. I think in this one it looks a bit better with it slower. But I don't know, it's down to your preference. Maybe make two versions. You can see two versions here. This one had a different colour scheme as well for the particles. This one had red, yellow and white. And the new one had, let's have a look. We used blue, white and yellow. So slightly different colour schemes, but overall they came out pretty good. I think the particles are moving a bit too fast in this new one that we've created today. So you could easily fix that by going into Blender, going into the emitter, and inside this emitter you can free the bake, and then you'll need to reduce the velocity here, the normal velocity, and just change the angle and the trajectory, and also change the amount of gravity there is, right? And that will you can then experiment with it. Basically, you've really got to experiment with this stuff to see what works and what doesn't work. So it's for you to, it's your time really now to just go and experiment, and feel free to update this and change it and do whatever you want to do to it. If you manage to make a version like this and put it on YouTube, then send me a link in the comment. I'd like to see what yours came out like as well. It'd be quite interesting. But that's pretty much this tutorial done. So we learned quite a lot in this one. We learned the camera blur. We learned how to rotate these objects. We learned how to parent things together. So we've got one object that can control the rotation of all these other objects. We're rotating objects on their own. We've got the particle system as well, and we're controlling how those particles flow. We also managed to make this cog right out of Blender. So we made that from scratch. So we did quite a lot in this tutorial. It was quite long, but sometimes it's worth explaining things in detail rather than just brushing over them. We did have one problem in there. It took a little bit of time to resolve that, right? Now in most videos people will just cut that out. they just won't bother explaining how they fix that problem. All of a sudden you see it fixed, but your one's broken, you don't know how to fix it. So if I see a problem like that, I don't like to just cut straight past it and edit the video. I'll rather leave it in there and show you how I fixed it. Obviously if it takes too long to fix, then I might do a bit of cutting, but in general I'll leave stuff like that and then resolve it, and you can see how I fixed it. So let's go to File, Save. Let's close down Blender. We're pretty much done with this tutorial. I found this one quite interesting actually. In the next tutorial we'll look at some other features of Blender that I haven't touched on yet, and then we'll see where we go from there. Okay, I look